Hello, my name is Max Bamfield. Welcome to my talk. Today I'll be discussing the way I developed a concept called the posture theory and later went on to develop the standing desk, which is now sold in the millions, but other people are taking the credit. I also developed a method for treating chronic fatigue syndrome between 1976 and 83. That is now used all around the world, and other people are taking the credit for that as well. Nobody has been able to improve my methods or my designs. They didn't exist before I did the research, though many have claimed that they did it. So that's the purpose of my talk today, to explain to you what I was told when I had a lot of health problems and how I solved them, so that you know I'm the source of these brand new ideas, and then take it from there. When I was 14 years old, I was a member of the Ascot Park Scout Troupe, and some friends of mine asked me to go on a camping trip with them to the Adelaide Hills. When we reached our destination, we pitched our tent and we laid our ground sheets out inside the tent on rock hard ground. We laid the sleeping bags on top, and then we went hiking and exploring the general area. We also picked up wood and dry grass and came back and lit a fire, made some tea, and then later in the night we went into the tent, went to sleep, and in the middle of the night I woke up and I was laying face down. I had my fist between my chest and the hard ground, and it was numb. I then noticed my left arm was numb, and I then noticed that my left face was numb, and the left side of my body and my leg was numb. So I yelled out to my mate, "Wake up, I'm paralysed on the left side. I think I should go to a doctor." And he said, "No, don't worry about it. Just roll over and you'll be right. You'll be right in the morning." So what could I do? It was extremely difficult for me to roll over because half my body was paralysed and wasn't cooperating. And as I laid there, I thought that if I tried to go home, it wouldn't be practical because one leg was paralysed and it was pitch black and we're a long way from the city lights. I wouldn't know what direction to go. So I thought I could die tonight, but I went to sleep, and when I woke up the next morning, everything was fine. Well, about 2 months later, bang, I felt this sudden stabbing pain in my chest. And I thought, what was that? And I looked down, there's no blood, no stab wound, no nothing. So I wonder what that was. A couple of months went by and bang, it happened again. And I thought, there's all this talk about if you've got chest pain, it's best to go see a doctor. It might be your heart. And so I went to the doctor and I asked him what was going on, and he tested my chest with his stethoscope, and he said, "There's nothing wrong with your heart." So I said to him, "Well, okay, doc, what's the cause of the pain?" And he said, "I don't know." Now, I was 14 years old, and I thought, how can doctors be studying diseases for 2,000 years and not know the cause of chest pain? It seemed to me to be quite odd. Well, a couple of months later, bang, it happened again. Another couple more months, bang. So I went back to the doctor, and he referred me to a heart specialist. And the heart specialist examined me with a cardiograph, and then he said something like this: "There's nothing wrong with your heart, so get out of my clinic and don't come back. I've got important things to do with older people who've got heart disease." He was putting on a good act, a big act, well-intended, aimed at convincing me there was nothing wrong with my heart. But he still couldn't explain the chest pain. Well, about another few years went by, and I was about 21, I suppose, I wonder, I thought, I haven't had those chest pains for a while. I wonder why not. And I had a new doctor at the time, so I asked him, and he said, I don't know. And I thought, really mysterious that they don't know the cause of chest pain. They know everything about the heart, but they can't explain to me the cause of chest pain. Well, as time went by, I started getting abdominal pains. And there was no explanation for them. And a couple more years went by and I started feeling faint, dizzy and breathless. And still, the doctors couldn't explain it. I said, what's the cause? I said, I don't know. And they'd prescribed pills that didn't work. Didn't help at all. And he said they should have, but they didn't. So that was sent to the psychologist. He said he's got 5 university degrees in psychology from 3 different universities and from 5 universities in 3 different countries. And he knew that my pains were all in the mind. And I thought, what a load of baloney. To study group work at the Institute of Technology. And it's all about psychology. There's no scientific proof for any of that stuff. But I couldn't do anything about it. So I thought, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I get pain within 10 minutes of sitting at a desk. This isn't chest pain. That had gone in the past, but he said, I thought, how am I going to study medicine? They do read a lot. And I thought, but they've got to study 1,000 diseases. I only have to study one, whatever my problem is. So I reckon if I read 1 word a day in medical dictionaries and start reading the top research literature in the world, I should know the answers within 12 months. They didn't know the cause. One of the things that I came across was a book that said something like this. It's a book of heart disease, and it's a reference book used by every university in the world, by Paul Wood, OBE of London. And it's mainly a large book, mainly about heart disease, different types. And there's a chapter in the back called Psychiatric Disorders. And this is what he says. He says, we all know that when we're anxious, it increases our heart rate, and we may feel a bit breathless, he says, and we may even feel a bit faint. Well, we all know that these are the symptoms of anxiety, don't we? But some people worry about things, and they worry themselves all day and all night until they get exhausted. And we call this anxiety disorder or anxiety state. It's a mental illness, and it's called Da Costa syndrome, amongst other things. And I thought, I've got all those symptoms, and it's not caused by anxiety. He went on to say, when these people are children, they're thin like me and stooped like me, and they're afraid of swimming and gymnastics and sport like football. I thought, you gotta be joking. Yeah, I'm pretty thin, and I had a really bad posture. I didn't even know until later. But I was club leader of the gymnastics club. I took swimming lessons for several years down at Brighton Beach, and I was a confident swimmer. And I knew people that weren't. And I knew people too worried about hurting themselves to do somersaults. So this book, I thought, this book is way off the mark. I've got to study medicine to sort this out. What is really causing my problems? Well, I went on and I came to the conclusion after a few years, there's very subtle relationship. I know something going on here, that leaning towards a desk is causing my chest, compressing my chest, my lungs and my abdomen to cause chest pain, breathing problems and abdominal pain, etc. I called that the posture theory and had it published in the Nurses Journal as an essay called The Matter of Framework. I later went and I became introduced to a few of the researchers in Adelaide, including professors of medicine. One of them was Professor Tim Morrell, who's the head of Adelaide Medical School. He was scoring six-year medical students' exam papers at the time. And he said to me this: it's an interesting theory, but scientists have proven all those theories. They had similar theories in the 19th century. Scientists have proven them wrong. And I thought, well, they might have proven them wrong. They haven't proven mine wrong. And he said, and so did another professor. I'll go on that. I haven't got time to go through all of this. It's not necessary. And he said exactly the same thing. You should stop trying to find a physical cause because there isn't one, and leave it up to the experts. And he said you should occupy your time, your very creative talent, creativity, with art. Do something useful with your time. Well, I thought, you can't cure pain with art. And I also thought, they've had 2,000 years to solve my problems. I'm not going to wait for them. I have to do this research. And at some stage I decided I'll devote my life to this if I have to, because there's no other explanations coming from anywhere else. So anyway, I went to the newspapers and I said, I've made this great discovery. And, you know, newspaper journalists, you think the leaders of public opinion or something. I said, are you going to publish something about this? He said, no, he can't. I said, why not? And he said, he doesn't know anything about medicine. He doesn't know enough about that. Unless I get support from the universities, he can't write anything. Well, he's a medical journalist. Oh, well, that's interesting. And so he refused to publish. So I went to the universities and they said I was wrong. So he wouldn't publish. So as time went by, I kept on trying to find the cause of these pains. And sitting up straight and standing up straight seemed to help. I even went to some of these other things like yoga and Alexander technique. They didn't help. They did help some of the other students in the class which had, backaches, but they're rather useless to me. I said they should work, well, they don't. And that's a common when people say these things. So I thought, well, okay, what am I going to do? Well, I suppose I was 38 or 39, and the pain was really severe. The pain in my abdomen was really severe. And so I said to my doctor, I want to go to a medical specialist who specialises in these things and have it open me up, cut me open, open up my belly and have a ruddy good look where these pains are coming from. And he didn't want to send me to a specialist. So I talked him into it. And when I said this to a specialist, he's a gastroenterologist, he said he doesn't want to cut me open. I said, why not? He said, because this is a very common problem. And thousands of patients like you want to be cut open. And we never find anything anywhere in the world. And I said, well, I don't believe this. I said, if you don't cut me open, and I have to put up with this pain, I'm going to commit suicide anyway. So don't worry about problems. And he said, all right. And he cut me open. I woke up from the operation. A few days later, there's a 10-inch scar. Now I'm going to show you if I can. There's a 10-inch scar in my belly. Can you see that? It's just down there. It's still there about 35 years later. And I said, what'd you find, Doc? And he said, nothing. I told you I'd find nothing. So I thought, well, I've tried that. Specialists, surgeons, can't find anything. And I'm in pain. I thought, that's amazing. And I had to put up with the pain. Another 10 years or so went by, and I was in agonising pain again. And I went to another specialist, and he put a tube down my throat. It's called a gastroscope. And he said, there's nothing wrong with your esophagus, which is your food pipe, and there's nothing wrong with your stomach, and there's nothing wrong with the bowels in between, and there's nothing wrong with the duodenum, which is just past the stomach. And I had all sorts of other tests, and they showed nothing. So I thought, what am I going to do? And he gave me a pill. I had temporary relief. And other than that, it was just a waste of time. They couldn't do anything, couldn't find anything, nothing helped. So I kept increasing the size of my desk, and I kept doing thousands of other things, not just a desk. I was trying everything in the book. And, you know, sitting, standing, moving, laying back, laying down, all sorts of things. And by this time, my desk was getting bigger and taller. I added platforms to it and books on top of that, and it's right on top of books, and I put an angled platform on it. It seemed to help, but it didn't. And so then what did I do? Well, I thought, this isn't working, and I thought maybe I'm on the wrong track. And one day, I added another platform to my desk. I learned to change from writing with a pen to typing. And one day, I was typing for 2 hours without pain. I thought, you beauty, I'm going to become rich and famous. This problem affects 5% of the world population, which is 350 million people, and I've just discovered how to prevent that pain. It's a standing computer desk of a particular height and position. And I'm not going to tell you any more about it because lots of people out there making desks reckon they discovered it. That is just a load of bollocks. They didn't. They've got standing desks. I never saw one anywhere in Adelaide. Never. I only heard about one, and which people thought it was a joke. But anyway, so I invented this way of treating pain, a standing computer desk. I rushed off to the newspapers after I'd had it published in my book to secure my copyright so that other bloody unscrupulous people couldn't steal and say we discovered it, because they definitely didn't. And the newspaper journalists were saying, we can't publish unless you've got the backing of the universities. So I rushed down to the universities and they said, look, these problems have a psychological cause and you can't cure diseases with a desk. And I thought, I'm getting nowhere again. I've got the solution to this problem and nobody listens to me. So I went down to some furniture companies. This is what the first guy said. He's like all my dogs, nice guys. He said this, he said, look mate, we can hardly even sell ordinary desks. And nobody ever asked for standing desks. It's a waste of our time. I'm telling you, you're just wasting your time. But he said, I'll tell you what, there's another furniture shop down the road, so go there. So I went to another furniture shop, factory, more or less, and the guy there said, these guys were typing with one finger. They're nice guys, but they weren't Albert Einstein. And or they were talking to a secretary who had to type for them because the 16-year-old girl could type better than they could. They were just dictating these things to them, their notes and things. And they said, look, we can't afford to risk tooling up for a product that will probably never sell. It'll cost us a lot of money to tool up. We never sell. It costs us more money than we can get back. So that I was wasting my time. I said, look, mate, let's go down the road. There's another furniture company. So I went down and I went to suburbs and things. And another guy said this. He said, look, a few years ago, we had a standing desk on display in our showroom. Nobody wanted it. So he said, he put it out in the back room where it's gathering dust and going rusty. And he said, now that he remembers it's a waste of space out there, next week he's going to put it out for the garbage trucks to take away. It's a waste of space. So that's what the furniture company said. Well, a few years went by and I heard about this TV show where they promoted for a week this guy is called, they were calling Adelaide Standing Professor. And basically describing this really clever guy who did this research into standing death. And his name was John Coveney of Flinders University. And apparently he has some role to play in state, interstate and international health education. Well, I've been selling my books about my discoveries to school and public libraries, about 800 of them or more, to those sort of locations, because I didn't want kids to grow up sick like me. I want to tell them about the hazards of poor posture. And now he's getting the credit for it. I rang up the TV stations, they weren't interested in me. And I think they're scared of the universities. They might lose their job if they criticise a professor. So I rang John Coveney up and I said, did you know that's my copyright? I did all this research. I said, where did you get the idea from? And he said he had a chat with a friend in 2005. Well, that's 8 years after 7 or 8 years after I published it, after I invented it and published it. And because ideas like this would spread about amongst people who deal with this type of research, and there'd be two things going wrong here. They don't want to admit that they couldn't solve the problem. They don't want to admit their ideas about psychological causes were wrong, and they want to get the credit for the good ideas. So that means they're setting me up, say I don't exist, and give the credit to the people who actually couldn't solve the problems. So instead of saying I proved old ideas were wrong, they're saying we're never wrong, these are our new ideas and Banfield doesn't exist. And for some strange reason, they're getting the help of the TV programs. So I thought, all right. And then in 2007, somewhere in this general area, I joined Wikipedia. And there's these two ridiculous editors criticising every word I wrote. But before then, 6 editors came and said to my posture theory, a page about it, put in there by an email correspondent with my permission. They said, delete, delete, speed delete, speed delete, 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 speed delete. This is just one guy's theory. That's their reason for deleting it. And as far as I can see, they broke all the rules of Wikipedia by ignoring all my evidence that I actually did this. And then 2 years later, after I had all physical evidence for the condition called the Costa syndrome, and they removed it and saturated the page with psychological causes and kept my method of treating it, which is sit, stand and move and all that sort of thing. They said, let's nuke this sucker, and they banned me. So nobody would know about my theory. Nobody would know the information in Wikipedia on lots of pages is mine, and they're making sure nobody finds out. Well, guess who those anonymous editors would be? People pretending to be experts, trying to hide all their mistakes from the past and pretending to be respectable. So the next thing happened about 2012-13. I sent an essay to the British Medical Journal and they published it. And then I sent about 30 in the next 2 years. And I discovered the exact cause of the chest pain, which no one else knew before, and the exact cause of the abdominal pain and several other things. I've made about 12 major discoveries that no one else in the world has ever made before. And the chest pain is due to postural displacement of the 7th rib down behind the 8th rib, which pinches a nerve. The mystery is solved. And that's going to help 350 million people. And 10 million doctors couldn't find it. Well, in 2002, Muley had a cricketer come in, a woman with this chest pain. And he looked at her with a ultrasound. And he said he'd found that it's due to a loose rib. And it was between the 7th and 8th ribs where they'd curled up. And he snipped off end of that rib and the pain stopped. Why? Because if she leans forward again, it's not going to hit that nerve. So, and he said posture is one of several possibilities, but he really didn't have any idea. And so I thought, that's good. There's a couple of things here you need to understand. I spent 20 years telling doctors, stop saying it's all in one, start looking for a physical cause or I'll beat you. About 3 years after I wrote about this stuff, he did this experiment and a woman came in and had the pain immediately and got into the hospital within 2 hours. Well, most patients with the chest pain that I have only have it every couple of months. Doctors never ever found it. And he was looking for it, probably because of my 1,000-page book written over the last 6 years. So why don't you guys start looking for this instead of saying it's all in the mind? And he still couldn't figure it out. Now, if you want to know, nice guy, good discovery, thank you, mate. But this is the problem. What can you say about this? It's completely different. What causes cancer? Oh, Agent Orange. What a load of rubbish. Sounds good. But you get one patient with cancer. Could have been caused by Agent Orange, DDT, Marilyn Ford, anything. And you say something like poor posture could be a cause. Well, yeah. But I couldn't figure out how or why. Well, I figured out why. And I published it, and this is the reason. I ran my hand down my chest because I was curious. And the 8th rib is displaced forward. The less I say about that, the better. Because guess what? Teams of experts will say, we discovered it, when it's absolutely impossible for them to do it. There's no way in a million years they could do it. In fact, 2,000 years haven't been able to do it. So that, because of that shape of the chest, it pushes the 7th rib down behind the 8th rib and pinches the nerve. That's the cause. And ever since then, I expect I get the Nobel Ruddy Prize for that. It's a major mystery that they've been looking for a long time, 2,000 years. So, therefore, I went to the newspapers again. Well, the Messenger leader published it as well. Because I wasn't getting anywhere with this. What's the use of publishing stuff if nothing happens? And people say, oh yeah, we've known about that for centuries, when they haven't. So what I said in the Messenger leader is this. Now the doctors can diagnose this in 5 minutes, instead of spending thousands and thousands of dollars on x-ray, blood tests, CAT scans, angiograms and all sorts of things. It's going to save the governments trillions of dollars a year. I did some calculations and they published it. Not 100% certain of the calculations. A lot of money the government's going to be saved in diagnostic costs. And then they published it in, I sent one letter and they published it in 3 Messenger leaders in the northeastern suburbs of Adelaide. This is a local newspaper that they delivered to your letterbox for free. Well, I went to the major newspapers and they wouldn't have a bar of it. Not interested, they said. None of them, major newspapers, none of the TV stations, 60 Minutes, Four Corners, Today Tonight, none of them are interested. Why? Somebody's gotten to them and said this. They want to take the credit for it and they want to hide the fact they couldn't solve the problem. And then the newspaper journalist says, I solved it, it's going to be sacked, their career's going to be ruined. That's what I reckon happened. If it's not what happened, you explain yourselves. So I thought, this is terrible. What am I going to do? Well, the immediate thing I did is stop publishing. No more essays from me. They're going to give the credit to other people. And then there was these transforming SA health policies and all sorts of changes happening in the SA health system, and I thought this is happening worldwide. I've just saved governments a fortune. And the people who used to get the wrong ideas don't want you to know that. They're still alive and they've got careers. And they're telling the newspaper, shut up about this, right? So that they can take the credit. And instead of looking, I showed they were wrong, they can say, we're clever, we got it right. Well, I didn't go about to do that. I went out and solved the problem that affected me and 350 million other people. I didn't go around trying to prove other people were wrong. But that's, in my interpretation, why they're silent about this. And there are other reasons, right? The fact is, I solved these problems because they didn't or couldn't. And I don't want to go into any further detail about that. I might accidentally say something useful and I'll take the credit for it. So that's what happened. I solved several problems in those 30 essays and then stopped. And nobody has been able to improve any of my ideas since. They just copy, nothing there. My ideas, copy, nothing improved since. Nothing. So if you see them out there now, this is what's happening. What are the newspapers doing? They're reporting that these teams of experts have discovered that sitting is a health hazard. They didn't discover anything. I wrote that bloody 30 years ago. And they're saying the furniture makers are highly creative and innovative, game-changing designers who developed the new smart desk, the up-down desk. They're the leading authorities on the new sit-stand desk revolution. No, they're not. They're the guys that look, mate, thanks for the idea, but nobody wants it. We're not going to do it. All of us, now they're these amazingly creative people? I don't think so. They're good designers, but they're using my design in all of their products. And they're now on display in universities, science labs where they're making COVID vaccines, and in hospitals everywhere. And the people there, I'm sure most of them are respectable, honest people, think it come out of research departments, come out of me. And there's dishonest people going out there saying they solved the problems. They invented the desk, etc., etc. And they discovered the health benefits. And they're changing things to make it look different to me. Because they know how valuable those discoveries were. And they know how much money the government's saving and everybody else. And they know how much it's going to improve the health of the people who used to sit in chairs and get sick and not know why. So that's what happened. And you'll see now my diagrams are being slightly altered to make them look different. My desk design is being made in all sorts of elaborate ways. Some people put treadmills under it, some people putting timing bells on it, some people making a really exotic looking stylish desk. They're really good designers, but they didn't do the research and they didn't invent the correct desk. They just did it for other reasons. Mine is the desk that's correct, and mine is the research that brought about this new change. Instead of people, we had it in the back room, nobody ever bought it, so I'm putting it in the dump. They're saying, we're selling them this desk, which we couldn't sell in the 1990s, suddenly become very lucrative. We're making a fortune out of it. I made the difference. Okay? So if you're honest out there and you're making these things, do me a favour and pay me royalties. And don't pretend that you did it. That's called fraud and copyright thievery. Every lecture and every talk and every sales pitch and every diagram based on my research is criminal offence. Are you offended by that? Yeah, you should be. Just acknowledge my name, pay me and get on with it. Thank you.